wrong, and welcome to the Theatre of the Mind live. 289, I think now. And the reason why I'm early is because I hope you've got your extra large popcorn. Extra large. Not that I'm a size queen at all, but well, what can I say? It's just everywhere, everywhere. And headline of the day goes to the Sun. So you know what we're going to talk about tonight, don't you? Oh yes, there's only one story in town, and yes, we're gonna do that. Let me just see if I can. No, it doesn't make any sense. Unless I do that. No, that doesn't work either. Oh, fucking crying out loud. Maybe if I just that'll do. Right. Let me get myself in the right place. Hibiscus with the Jaeger bomb. And your comments, because they're just here. Well, tonight we're not going to do, the usual thing of just, doing it verbatim. We're going to do it my way. And it'll feel quite lively. Hopefully, when we start at past, people are like, bloody hell, he started early, what's going on? Well, we know what's going on, or going off, or taking off, or, I mean, are you still not traumatised by seeing his, scrotum in white, not white fronts, I don't even know what they were, but budgie smugglers. I mean... And what was Meghan Markle doing with him? Just asking for a friend in Epstein's Paris flat. What was that all about then? Because he wouldn't want her. Unless. Anyway, speculation. Welcome everybody to the Body of the Kirk. Welcome to Live 289. I'll do the intro at kind of past. I'm just going to do parish notes for the moment. I understand Sister Mary has gone off in a hiss. She's had a hissy fit and stormed off. And I said, Sister Mary. She said, "Oh, your comments, your parishioners. They said I wouldn't want a fisherman's friend after giving up the bishop." I said, "Well, would you?" She said, "I'm not sucking on a fisherman's friend. It does things to me throat." So I said, "All right, Sister Mary, take your big dog dick with you and go and find those 3 Austrian nuns because they haven't been seen or heard of for a few months." She says, "I know, Reverend. What's that? Starmer wants to be the next Chancellor. He doesn't need a red box. He already has one, allegedly." Les, that's very good. That's very good. Should have used more lube. Oh, hang on a second. I want water. I don't want me hibiscus just yet. So welcome, and let's get to the comments. And David Graham in early doors, big lad. Evening, folks, from a cold, damp Sunderland. Nothing wrong with dampness. I prefer moistness, but dampness is fine. Says he with a damp cough. Well, it is February and midwinter. I lived in Scotland. Summer was generally one day in June. By the way, R.I.P. John Virgo, the legendary snooker player, commentator and entertainer. His catchphrase, pot as many balls as you can. Was that a catchphrase? So thank you, David. Billie Eilish. She's claimed that no one is illegal on stolen land in the USA. How ironic is that her mansion is on Native American land. Time to leave your mansion, Billy. Well, they're all at it, man. They're all just full of, the proverbial. And why is that? Well, I just love the way that the Donald hasn't mucked about. I mean, first term, he was, "Oh, we're going to drain the swamp." And everybody went, "Oh, we're the swamp. You're not going to drain us." So he never got to drain the swamp. Now, he's not said a word. He's just gone, "Do what you want with it." And I mean, it's only been 5 days-ish. So the Epstein dump, and that's not a metaphor for anything else or a euphemism, but the Epstein dump landed on Friday. You know, when they kind of bury bad news, they just dump it on a Friday and everybody's forgotten by Monday, except not in this case. So they dumped all the stuff. And then Saturday, it's Bill Gates has got an STD. Well, he did. And, you know, he's in Australia at the moment. And he's been interviewed. And he's gone, no. That email that wasn't an email. It was just a note in an email that Jeffrey was sending himself. And my legal team have said it's not kosher. So where did they get the Russian hookers from? And where did they get the description of his schmeckle from? And where did they get all of the information from that's in the Epstein files? Oh, backpedal. And then his ex-missus, Melinda Gates, has come out and gone, well, we need to think of the victims. What? You catching an STD from your husband? Seemingly, because that's what was in the Epstein files. So we're in a place here where very wealthy people are going, not me, Your Honour. No, you can't catch me. And others are running for cover. Because then 24 hours after Bill Gates is kind of fingered, well, he would do if he went to see the doctor, and the day after it was Peter Mandelson. And now the only story in town is not Bill Gates and his STD and other stuff and the dark stuff, the really dark stuff, and the Clintons having to go before Senate committee. And, well, have you heard any other news in the last 5 days? No, of course you haven't. So we're going to talk about, in fact, the Prince of Darkness is, thank you, Andy. Oh, hang on a second. I'll get to the bottom and give you a heart. Thank you for your support, young sir. Andy, I've done, like, you wouldn't believe the amount of research I've done today. And everything that I'm going to say tonight is factual, can be corroborated, and is factual, if I may be so bold. So, thank you, Andy. We're going to try it. The Bad Wolf Project. Oh, no way. I haven't watched Retro in a while. I wish him well and a speedy recovery. What? Right, okay. Yeah, Les, Bill Gates' ex-wife monstered him in an interview. Yeah, whoa. But he's just blindly... wait till... him, Fauci, and all the others involved in certain things, they're sat in front of people who are more powerful than them. Don't matter how much money they've got, they can still go to jail. So, let's get a sit rep. The sit rep is this. Mandy's gone from the Labour Party. Mandy's gone from the Privy Council, because the Royals are absolutely, how can I put this delicately, shitting themselves, because Teddy, Duke of Edinburgh, came out, not out, he says he's not, yesterday, and he's like, oh, we've got to think of the victims. And I was like, hold on a second, it's your bloody brother? Think of the victims, have a word with your brother. And then it comes out that Mandy's gone from Labour, from the Lords. He's resigned from the Lords. Charles the Weak has sacked him off the Privy Council. So it's, I think what this is, and I'm going to layer it. We're going to start with some fabulous scandal, fabulous. So we're going to put a dose of Epsom salts through the royal family. We're going to put a dose of Epsom salts through the Prince of Darkness and the Princes of Darkness. So we're going to talk political scandals, power, and we're going to bring you clarity in the chaos. So if you're not aware of, Mandy, I mean, the politicians know what he's been up to. They do. But the splashback is going towards Starmer. So Starmer's gone. I'm hearing rumours because the internet is hot tonight. Somebody said, well, he's going to resign at 6 o'clock tonight. But if he doesn't resign at 6 o'clock tonight, he's going to resign on Thursday. What? So it looks like there's a lot of manoeuvring going on. Starmer fighting for his political life because he appointed him when he was told, don't appoint him. He was like, no, he's fine. And the Donald, as I mentioned right at the very beginning of this live tonight, the Donald just went, oh, I'm sick and tired of the lot of you. There you go. 3 million or 3.5 million documents, 180,000 photos, 2,000 videos. And everybody, it's just, the internet is losing its mind. Everybody's losing their mind because there's so much stuff coming out. And the politicians who always thought that they would never get caught out because nobody was ever going to tell anybody else of what they were up to or what they were doing. And it's only when that Epstein tranche hit the wires, the internet, the everything, covered in brown stuff on Friday, that everybody went, oh! And I mean, even then, Mandelson didn't think I can't remember 75 grand going into my bank account. Now, I don't know about you, but if you had 75 grand just pop into your bank account, would you not be dancing, going down to the local pub and buying everybody a beer? You'd remember, and so would everybody in the pub. Oh, no. 10 grand to my husband? Oh, I can't remember that. 75 grand? Can't remember that. Well, he's remembering now because he's done, finished. He's not going to come back from this. Oh, so tonight, let's get everybody saying, Paulie Galtieri, oh, Mandy, well, you came and you gave without taking, but I sent you away. Should it be, oh, Mandy, well, you had no loo, but you came and that's inappropriate, young Adrian. Will Mandelson do bird? Says Lewis. I never think he's done a bird in his life. Willie Bollocks. Treacherous snake will slither his way out of it. He's not. He's not. This is... I mean, I've worked and honed everything this evening, Karina. Mad Matt UK. Good evening, everyone. Well, 120 letter of no confidence speculated. Oh, I say, Bad Wolf Project. And one of the things that I saw, because I've been watching Parliament all day, PMQs, I mean, that was just, well, Ginger Growler was in the pews. Ginger Growler was there. I mean, she looks like she's been on Ozempic because she's lost a few pounds. But there's Ashton. Oh my, Mandy, the optics are not good. They're not for Starmer either, or the Labour Party, because don't forget you've got the Denton and Gorton by-election in just over 2 weeks, and all of this is flying. All the brown stuff's flying. Oh, I say, the people of Manchester are going to have their say. So it looks like reform's in them. There are powerful forces behind the outing. This outing of British and European politicians. I honestly think many will be jailed. I'm with you. Europe's over. Europe's done. Especially if there's some elections going on in Germany. The AfD, if they get in, they've already said they're going to leave Europe. Europe's done, finished and over with. But I have told you that the European super union, as it was, the common market in 1972. Edward Heath, just chuck them overboard. Go on, another one, yeah. Did we pick them up in Soho? No, chuck them overboard. Edward Heath got us into the common market. Dirty old scrote. And, well, it's the... Europe's finished. Finished. So I'm not going to Is Retro in the body of the... Oh, Retro! I've really missed watching these lives. Evening, Retro, young sir. Welcome to the body of the Kirk. There's a special place in the pews. Don't forget the Pars cushions. Because the pews are now called the Starmers because they're hard on your derriere. And there's some altar wine and Battenberg if you've not had your dinner yet, or your supper, or your tea, however you want to describe it. The U Bovril says the EU's done. Wish someone would tell James O'Brien on LBC. Well... big wheels turn slowly, and you can guarantee that, well, grab your popcorn, buckle up, buttercup. I told you in December, 2026 was going to be wild. And if you think this is as wild as it's going to get for 2026, no, it's going to get even wilder. Tower Block Tracy, evening all. In celebration of my 34th birthday, I've released a new single called One Up the B-Side. One, Tower Block Tracy? Phil the Van. Did Andrew move house today? Napoleon blown apart. Well, you see, what they're doing is, like today, the royal family and their PR machine are saying, right, he's moved. Well, he moved 2 weeks ago. We know he's not in Royal Lodge, because he moved 2 weeks ago. But the royal family, to make sure that the splashback doesn't come, or the blast doesn't come anywhere near them, they've said, oh, he's moved. And the Prince of Darkness is off the Privy Council. So welcome to everyone. Midnight Fleet, says Des. So welcome everyone to the body of the Kirk. If I haven't mentioned you, I hopefully will get round to it once we start. I say... AL 1967. I have an exchange of correspondence between me and Mandelson when he was my MP when I lived in Hartlepool back in 1999. It's a hoot. Oh, I'm sure there are many things that he doesn't want making public. More to come, seemingly. So, give me 90 minutes and I'll give you political scandal. All of it. Tonight we're going to deal with myth of scandal. We're going to do the mechanics of scandal. We're going to do metabolism of scandal and the language of scandal. What am I talking about? Well, we'll look at the Profumo affair. We'll look at Westland helicopters. We'll look at the MP expenses. We'll look at the word treason and sedition and their meaning and the outcomes. So we're not here to decide guilt. We're here tonight on this live 289, to understand systems, the political systems. So give me 90 minutes and I'll give you the world of scandal. What are we talking about tonight? Scandals. That's not posh sandals before you start. Mandelson, Epstein. And if we have time, I'm going to tell you what they're keeping out of the news. If we don't have time, I'll have to do it tomorrow. But let me tell you this and advise you of this. Scandals don't reveal bad people. They reveal how power behaves when it thinks no one is watching. The House of Cards is tumbling. All of it. This could bring down the government, the monarchy, everything, all the institutions. Who's been lying? All of them. All of them. We're sitting here with, I mean, how big's your bucket of popcorn? If it gets any bigger, I'm going to need its own postcode. The House of Cards is tumbling. Charles the Weak. There was Camilla, the Queen Consort. She got out of a car and all of a sudden all the journalists are going, Camilla. And she legged it. I mean, fairly quick on her feet, to give her credit. She wasn't going to answer questions. Eddie was out yesterday. Think of the victims. All right, okay. They weren't saying that last week, were they? No. And where's Charlie the Weak? I'll leave that with you. Because 2026, at the end of it, we'll have a different king. We won't have a republic, but it's close as it's ever going to get. So the House of Cards. Oh, you can say that, but I can't possibly comment. So we're starting with a poll. The EU Bovril, Ted Heath got a 75 grand backhander from Brussels for getting us into the EU. I'm surprised he didn't spend it on rent, boys. Retro on his bikes. Toe is getting better, thanks, Bad Wolf. Oh, I wish you well, Retro. I understand you. You know, the best. Clever. Is it your back, your toe, or is it just what we all find with creaking bones? So tonight, because we've started early and we have to, for me to get everything in, we're starting with a poll. That's not pole vaulter, and my name's not Volta. I want to just have a sense check of where the body of the Kirk is this evening. So I'm going to ask you, and it's going to be 1 for yes, 2 for no, 3 for, I don't know. Going to ask you a straight question. 1, yes. 2, no. 3 for I'm unsure. Do you believe political scandals today are worse than they were 30 years ago? Do you believe political scandals today are worse than they were 30 years ago? 1 for yes, 2 for no, 3 for don't know, unsure. So, oh, blimey. So, Reg D and Lewis and Phil Levan and Des Ashton and Stuart, Angelic Inspirations, Les Griffiths, oh, blimey, let's have a look at Paulie, Dodzer, Albert, Amalia, Lionel, Cuban Pete, Nikki Watson, I say, Stephen Hall, Rusty's Roamings, Evening Rusty's Roamings, Stupidness World, The Bovril, Lauren Taylor, Mark Ogden, Johnny Ray, everybody, it's 100%. Oh, hang on, Andrew James says 2, same, but more we know more about them. Interesting point. Very interesting point. William Commons and Kaz, same shit, different government. So everybody, apart from maybe 1 or 2, I would say 99.9%, everybody's going, yeah, it is. So I'm going to have a look at the top 10 political scandals since Profumo. Now, what I've done within my research is there are some people that are old enough to remember the Profumo scandal, and it was a doozy. And there are people that are young, too young, to remember the Profumo scandal. So unless you've seen the film and the Pet Shop Boys song, I'm going to kind of give you a background. I'm going to explain it. So the top 10 is this. At number 1, in the last 60 years, the Profumo scandal, 1963. Bloody hell. 63 years ago. What was it about? Shagging. Shagging. It was about shagging and security panic and, well, lying to Parliament. It was a doozy. We are going to get into detail because the royal family were alleged to have been involved in the Profumo scandal, but well, Philip managed to get away with it, whatever that was. So the biggest scandal over the last 60 years, Profumo, by a country mile. Can you remember the Westland helicopter affair in 1986? Now, that included cabinet warfare. There was leaking to the press from this side and that side and the other side and up and down. And there was resignations. There was seemingly collective responsibilities fractured on live TV. But it was the Westland helicopter affair after all. And if you remember, politicians are not there for the benefit of the greater good. They are there to create the invisible prison that we all live in and get their snout into the trough of money as quick as they can go. So third on my top 10 list of UK political scandals is the arms to Iraq. Remember Matrix Churchill? There was the Scott report in the 1990s. Arms to Iraq and the Matrix Churchill scandal was in early 1990s, but the Scott report, 1996. Still 30 years ago, feels like yesterday. It was around exports and prosecution and fiery arguments about what ministers knew and how policy was presented. Follow the money. Oh, talking about follow the money. At 4, in your top 10 UK scandals, there was the Cash for Questions. That was 1994, still nearly 30 years ago. Remember, there were politicians, brown envelopes, there were lobbying, there was alleged payments to MPs for parliamentary questions. Sleaze in the Cash for Questions in 1994 became a brand. Should we talk at 5? Dodgy dossier. Can you remember the Iraq intelligence presentation in 2003? The clear and present danger from Saddam Hussein, weapons of mass destruction, and a 45-minute he could launch missiles at us, me and you, that would land 45 minutes later. Now, seemingly, there were dossiers. I mean, the BBC got their derriere kicked royally because Alistair Campbell said, no, they've not been sexed up. No. And seemingly, I remember seeing with these, there was a student that did some kind of thesis, and his thesis ended up in this dossier to sell the war. I mean, there was rows over sourcing and presentation, but remember the dodgy dossier, the Iraq intelligence presentation in 2003. That's at 5 in your top 10 UK scandals. But then, if you want Cash for Questions, you've got to have a look at number 6, which is Cash for Honours. Oh, you can buy a lordship, you can buy anything you want in this country, and that was only 20 years ago. 2006 to 2007. Does it feel a bit weird saying 2006 was 20 years ago? Remember, there was loans, there was party funding, peerages, the whiff of access for sale. And if you want to look at more money, Cash for Questions, Cash for Honours, MP's expenses. 2009. Straight after, 2008, where we all thought we were going to lose our homes, our money in the banks, and the banks were going to go under, they were going to roll over and play dead. Andrew James says, not forgetting the petty stuff like Wembley Stadium and Blair ordering radar for helicopters that didn't fit. So at 7, MP's expenses. It was simply systematic misuse. Repayments, resignations, prosecutions. IPSA was created, and there were people claiming for heating in their stables, and people were claiming for second and third homes, and the MP's expenses nearly brought the whole system down because the whole system was corrupt. And if you want to look at corruption, let's look at the media at 8 on your top 10 UK scandals. Can you remember the phone hacking? That's sort of Leveson era, 2011 onwards. The press, the police, politics, inquiries into relationships and culture, phone hacking. Millie Dowler, parents were given a phone. And then journalists were ringing phones to explain. Basically, the mobile phones, when they were still in their infancy, I would say, at the beginning of the noughties, you would have an answer service on your phone. And the answer service normally had a default code, 4-pin code, of 0000. And nobody put a pin on their answer service. So everybody was just accessing their answer machine, service, messages, and didn't use the pin. Or if they did, they didn't change it. So journos used to just go in where they did with the members of the royal family. Ding, 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 ding. Hello, you can leave a message. Ding, 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 ding. 4 zeros. You get all of the messages that are on the answer service. That's what the phone hacking was around. That was the media. So don't forget, the media was corrupt before we got a lockdown. And then, talking of lockdown, at 9 on your top 10, at 10 of your biggest scandals in the world ever, Partygate. Everybody was at it. I mean, Johnson took the fall, but Rich Boy Sunak was at it. Starmer was at it. And poor Bojo the Clown was seen with pizza and beer at number 10. I mean, in essence, it was rule making versus rule breaking. Police fines. Oh, Your Honour, mea culpa, I'm guilty. I had a beer at number 10 and I shouldn't have done. But there were parliamentary consequences. And at 10 on your top 10 UK scandals, the pandemic procurement and VIP lane controversy. I've only got 2 words for you. Michelle Moan. Has she been arrested yet? Have they done anything to get the money back off her? No. I mean, the VIP lane was a high priority channel for PPE, protective clothing and stuff for NHS and nurses and doctors. It seemingly there was transparency and process, but it wasn't transparent and the process was under fire. So can you see it's just continual? Bad Wolf Project. In 1996, I purchased a Titan phone. Nothing better than a Titan. That would scan passing mobiles, clone the number, give you free calls from that captured number. And I See You makes a very, very, very good point. These politicians, they can't say lessons learned anymore because it just doesn't wash. But that's why the Labour Party, we could have a general election at some point this year or 2027. I mean, do you think Farage and Reform are ready? It's just falling about their corrupt ears. So, you and I, let's walk through the portal. Let's enter the theatre of scandal. So tonight's live is not about sex. It's about power under pressure. Because every political scandal, sexual or otherwise, follows the same ancient rhythm. Desire, secrecy, denial, exposure, ritual sacrifice. Profumo wasn't the first man to stray. He was the first to teach Britain, this sceptred isle, what happens when the private life of power collides with public trust. Since then, scandals haven't disappeared. They've just learned how to dress better, lawyer up faster, and apologise with their fingers crossed. So in this live, we're not gawping. We are mapping it. Because once you see the pattern, I would suggest you stop being shocked and you start being informed. So let's begin with the original myth. Second vote. 1 for yes, 2 for no, 3 for I don't know. We're going to talk about Profumo and the original myth, the original scandal that changed this country. And yes, there's a post office scandal, Phil Levan, I agree. Is lying to Parliament a more serious offence than personal misconduct? 1 for yes, 2 for no, 3 for unsure. Is lying to Parliament a more serious offence than personal misconduct? Tarblock Tracy and the Bad Wolf Project, Sandra Whittam and Lewis, Nicky Watson, Napoleon Blown Apart, Alison and Stuart and the All Bovril, Rusty's Roamings. Rusty's Roaming says, yeah, it's treason. I'm going to explain what treason is in a moment. Stephen Hall says, my old hi-fi would pick up phone calls on medium wave when mobiles came out. Les Griffith says it should be. Lionel and Thingy thing. Rusty's Roamings, Les Griffiths, Tom Harney's, Oval Raw and Johnny Ray and Catwoman Jones and Lauren Taylor and William Commons all saying yes, lying to Parliament is a more serious offence than personal misconduct. So if you're old enough to remember or young enough not to know, I'm going to explain what the Profumo affair was and is. Now, the Profumo affair went on between 1961 and 1963. I'm going to tell you what it was, who was involved, and why it went boom. So John Profumo was the Secretary of State for War, because in the early 60s, we were only 15, 16 years out of World War II. And he was shagging Christine Keeler. Now, people might use different language and say he was having an affair with Christine Keeler. She was only 19 at the time, mucky old tart. But then he stood up in the Commons and lied. He said there was no impropriety. But when the truth caught up, he resigned. I mean, the scandal absolutely mauled Macmillan's government and helped rot public trust in the grown-ups, for want of a better term. So the key cast members in all of this was John Profumo. And I'll get to the others in a second. But John Profumo was the senior minister. The crime wasn't sex. People weren't bothered about who he was shagging and why and the how and the wherefore. It was all around lying to Parliament. Remind you of anyone current? And then there's Christine Keeler. She was a model. She was at the centre of the storm. But the problem was John Profumo was shagging Christine Keeler, while Christine Keeler was shagging a Soviet naval attaché. But then there was a guy called Stephen Ward. If you remember the film, he was a sort of a society osteopath who introduced people, a bit like Jeffrey Epstein of the day. He just had introduced people. He was a fixer, facilitator. He hosted the parties. Later, he went on trial, but the case ended with him dying. Don't worry, the Bovril. I'm getting to Mandy Rice Davis in a moment. Profumo was certainly not channel number 5. No. Bad Wolf Project. What about Baron Boothby, a Conservative MP and later life peer, became entangled with the craze in the early 1960s? Yeah, he was banging one of them, wasn't he? Seemingly. Boothby? Well, we can say that now because they're both dead. So these are the main characters. Yes, Mandy Rice Davis. It was Christine Keeler who was pictured with the chair in between her knees. That famous picture. I mean, iconic picture. But then Mandy Rice Davis, she was also, the pair of them were banging. I mean, they were just, my mum would have called them good time girls. Not suggesting that they were doing anything illegal, just having a good time. Banging like barn doors in storms. But there was another character, and this is why I believe the Profumo affair blew up beyond all recognition, was because there was a Soviet naval attaché included, Yevgeny Ivanov, if I've pronounced that correctly. There was a security panic that Keeler may have been seeing him also, creating a Cold War pressure cooker. So she was banging this Soviet naval attaché and banging Profumo at the same time. 19-year-old. Dear Lord. Now you're probably saying, okay, I wasn't around, I wasn't old enough. So why was it such a big deal, Reverend? Well, there was the National Security Theatre. I mean, you've got a war minister and a woman possibly also seeing a Soviet officer. It was the perfect Cold War headline. It would have made for a great Michael Caine movie. There was perjury by vibes. The real injury was Profumo misleading the House of Commons. I mean, it's a rupture in the idea that leaders mean what they say and say what they mean. But if you add to this mix, there was also, I would term, the class crack. It dragged the private world of the elites into daylight. The clubs, the fixers, the press restraint, not wanting to upset the upper echelons, royalty et al., and the One rule for you, one rule for us. I mean, that's the archetype that'll echo through every later scandal. It was the elite can get away with whatever they want. You've got to play by the rules. And then there was the Denning firewall. The Denning report concluded there was no security leak was proven, but by then the smell was, it was in the curtains, it was in the upholstery, it was in the carpet, it was in everything, and everybody was like, oh no, you're going to have to go, bunny lad. But there was also, you're saying, oh, okay, what was the royal angle? Well, did you not hear? And if you haven't heard about this, I'm going to tell you. Seemingly, at all of these parties that were arranged by Stephen Ward, that the girls Mandy Rice Davis and Christine Keeler were at and shagging, there was a man that used to go round naked, apart from a mask, and he would offer people drinks. Seemingly, some people allege that was Prince Philip, the Queen's husband, Duke of Edinburgh, who loved a shag, according to Kitty Kelly. So, what's solid, probably Prince Philip at the party, in reputable retellings is association via Stephen Ward, who sadly died, killed himself. Ward moved in these high society circles and has been reported as an acquaintance of Prince Philip through clubland networks. I mean, there's no proof of wrongdoing, just proximity that fed the frenzy. But what's not solid and possible just rumour was claims that Philip was directly involved in the affair itself, that he might have had a dance with Keeler and or Mandy Rice Davis and or others. But is that just tabloid fodder? Is it because people were orbiting with fame? Zero necessary fuel. There's nothing there. I mean, the tabloids inflamed it so that Philip was there when there was no proof that he was. It was just rumour and supposition. The fact was, Profumo lied to Parliament. And the liars who lie repeatedly don't want to be lied to. And that's why it ended up being a scandal. So the royal angle was largely about proximity and gossip, not proven conduct. Ward knew everyone, and that's what made the story feel radioactive. And as I said to you earlier, that's very good, Phil Levan. As I said to you earlier, I want to explain treason and sedition, because there's all these people talking about, so what's going to happen to Mandy? Well, papers have been given by number 10 to the Met, who are going to investigate. Des Ashton says, Mandy Rice Davis dropped Keeler right in it. She packed her bag and ran to Cyprus to stay away from the glare of publicity. Oh, yeah. And not forgetting Thatcher killed the ITV franchises over a documentary. Thank you, Andrew James. So I think the reason why I put the Profumo scandal at number 1 in the top 10 is that Profumo taught us how scandal begins. With a lie. Westland showed us how power manipulates process. And the expenses scandal proved what happens when the audience finally gets the paperwork. That's me and you. So we get to see it and we go, whoa, what are you doing? Bloody hell, man. I mean, there are some MPs that are not MPs anymore, but they complained that if everything was stripped away after the expenses scandal, I can't live on 80 grand a year. Bloody hell. So here's a rhetorical question for tonight. When does misconduct become betrayal? When does dissent become danger? And who gets to choose the words? Treason, sedition, security. that decide the verdict before the evidence is even heard. So now that you've seen the scandal, let's talk about the language used to control how scandals, plural, are judged. So why 14th century treason laws don't fit a 21st century state? Some of the most powerful words in British law were written when kings rode horses, messages travelled by candlelight, and treason meant turning up with a sword. And somehow we're still using those ideas in 2026. The core of our treason law comes from the 14th century, a medieval state obsessed with survival. Now, back then, the country was the crown. To threaten the monarch was to threaten its existence itself. And this is key. Treason was personal, physical, and immediate. You weren't tweeting, you weren't leaking to the press. You were raising an army or sharpening a blade. And what treason actually meant back then, in medieval England, treason meant very specific things. You were trying to kill the king. You were waging war against him and or her, helping his or her enemies, and undermining the line of succession. Hang on a second. What about Meghan and Harry? Can they be done for treason? So you see, it was about action, not opinion. Movement, not mood. Steel. Cold blade, not speech. So as has been intimated in 2025 and 2026, back in the 14th century, thought was not treason. Speech was not treason. Only action was. So this is why it doesn't map onto 2026. If you fast forward 700 years, we no longer live in a state where the monarch is the nation. We live in a constitutional system where power is distributed, argued over, criticised, and crucially, supposed to be challenged. A democracy that treats dissent like treason is no longer a democracy. It's a nervous system in panic. Now, I've explained the old ways, the old threats. Here are the modern threats, because they're very, very different. We've got cyber warfare. We've got economic coercion, information operations, and institutional capture. None of that fits neatly into a medieval framework designed for swords, horses, and banners. So if we're serious, treason law should be updated, not to silence people, you or I, but to clarify reality. I've mentioned over the past couple of lives about the lawmakers, not the cheese makers, not the bread makers, the lawmakers. They're making the laws to entrap you and I in an invisible jail. But laws should protect the state from real enemies, not protect the powerful from uncomfortable questions. That distinction is the difference between strength and fear. So I'm going to ask you for another poll. This time it's the Iraq dodgy dossier. 1 for yes, 2 for no, 3 for I don't know. Tar Block Tracy, candlestick maker. Blessed are the cheese makers. Lewis, you got what I was thinking. So the next question I'm going to ask you is, do you believe the case for the Iraq war was knowingly exaggerated. 1 for yes, 2 for no, 3 for I don't know. Do you believe the case for the Iraq War was knowingly exaggerated? Dodzer, Phil Levan, and Kaz and Des and Matthew Whedon, the U Bovril, Sierra Alpha Bravo. Drove one of their cars once. Elliot and Comic Mania, I See You, Gribbo, Garin, Bad Wolf Project, Lewis, Nicky Watson, Amalia, Stuart, Mad Matt, Tarblock Tracy says, was it Professor Plum in the kitchen with a Battenberg? Enver, Pauling Makepeace, and Reg D saying, yes, there's not a no in there. So that's the kind of temperature of the room, the theatre of the mind, the body of the Kirk. The body of the Kirk is not judging. It's just giving an opinion. Because remember what I said about treason. There was old-style treason, but in 2026, could it be information operations, institutional capture? Could it be people just voting that they believe that the case for the Iraq War was knowingly exaggerated? That is everyone's opinion. And I'm just relaying that through this particular live. So, treason, sedition, and why words matter more than ever. So people in general, whether it's in social media or online, I mean, look at Lucy Connolly and some of the others that were jailed because of what they've tweeted or said in a Facebook post or a meme. In 2026, we, that's the collective we, the amorphous mass, the great unwashed, we throw around words like treason and sedition. They've already been mentioned today by the politicians. We throw them around as insults now. But they're not insults. They're legal explosives, in my view. And if you don't know what they really mean, you can be manipulated with them. So let's define treason. Treason is the most serious crime a state can accuse someone of. At its core, it means actively betraying the state in favour of an enemy. Not criticising, not protesting, not exposing wrongdoing, helping an enemy. Historically, that meant giving intelligence, providing resources, taking up arms, or taking it up anywhere else you want to. And sedition is slightly different and more dangerous when abused. Sedition is about encouraging rebellion or disorder against authority. So, you know, when Starmer came out and went, oh, you right-wing thugs, it's all right-wing thugs. That's sedition. Encouraging rebellion, rising up, disorder against authority. But the critical distinction, sedition lives in the grey zone between speech and action. You see, it's why authoritarian systems love it. It's vague, it's elastic, it's easy to stretch over journalists, activists, and inconvenient voices, yours and mine. But why democracies must be careful? In a healthy democracy, the default assumption is this: criticism is not betrayal. So, if calling out corruption is sedition, then honesty becomes a crime. And history shows a pattern. First, redefine dissent as danger, then blur the language, finally punish speech whilst claiming security. So Starmer today at PMQs, he was claiming security services, national security, every other way of saying security, security, security. And if you look at what we've experienced in this country around Southport and the seeming right-wing fuggery. The press and the government redefined dissent. They defined it as danger. And then they blurred the language. People were being jailed for online tweets and opinions. And then they punished that speech whilst claiming it was a security issue. They were keeping everybody safe. That's not law enforcement. That is narrative control. So when you hear words like treason or sedition, ask yourself 3 questions. Always. 1. Who defines the threat? The right wing, Southport. Who was defining the threat? The government. So 1. Who defines the threat? 2. Where is the actual harm? There were people in the northeast of England, Hartlepool, Middlesbrough, Sunderland, Newcastle. They were coming out because it was like a Saturday night entertainment. I'll go and have a few beers and I'll watch the riots. Were they harmed? No. 1, who defines the threat? 2, where is the actual harm? And 3, the most important, who benefits from silencing this? Strong states don't fear their citizens' voices. Weak ones do. And the law tells you which you're living in. So here's another vote. It's around treason and sedition. 1 for yes, 2 for no. In 2025 and 2026, is dissent increasingly being treated as a threat to the state? 1 for yes, 2 for no, 3 for I don't know. The Bad Wolf Project says the $1 million question is, what does Moan have on the government or on Boris? Interesting. Amali says, were being jailed? Oh, is Roger Cook still alive? And then he said Scotland Yard had contacted Number 10 and told them not to spoil their ongoing investigation. Des says, sounds like bollocks. So Phil Levan, law is a fake economy. Good point. Phil Levan, Des Ashton, Catwoman Jones, Oval Raw, Cuban Pete, Stuart, Enver, Karina and Albert and Dave Warrington, Mad Matt, Andrew James, Rusty's Roamings, Amalia and Gary Shabot, Reg and Super Teds and Lauren Taylor, all saying yes. So thank you for all of your votes. It's very interesting where the room goes, where the body of the Kirk goes. So let's look at the Westland affair, because it was a big deal at the time. It was all over the news. But it's one of those scandals that people don't really understand and forget about because there's no shagging in it. It's just money. Money. It's all about the Benjamins. So the reason why I'm mentioning the Westland affair is because this is when the cabinet became the battlefield. It wasn't in the press. It wasn't out on the streets. It was in Parliament, in the cabinet. So Profumo, as I've mentioned, taught Britain how scandal begins. Westland taught Britain something much darker. It is this: how power eats itself behind closed doors. So it's the mid-1980s Britain. Bit of a Cold War hangover. Thatcherism was in full stride. And then there was Westland Helicopters. Small company, big symbolism. Defence, jobs, sovereignty. This is not gossip. This is state machinery. But two visions collided inside government. There was one camp wanted a European solution, and another camp pushed for an American rescue. Now, what should have been an internal policy argument became war by memo. This scandal wasn't about helicopters. It was about who gets to decide and how. Confidential letters started appearing in the press. Selective leaks, tactical briefings, plausible deniability with fingerprints all over it. I would suggest to you that when ministers leak against each other, the cabinet stops being a collective and becomes a colosseum. I mean, there was resignations, careers were ended, authority bled out quietly. So why does Westland matter? There was no sex, no spy, no salacious hook. But that's exactly why it matters. Westland revealed a new truth. Modern scandal doesn't always explode. Sometimes it just corrodes. Westland scandal showed that decisions could be shaped by factions, information could be weaponized, and loyalty inside government was conditional. So Profumo, shagging, was personal. Westland was actually institutional. One broke trust through a lie. The other broke trust through process abuse. And this was the moment when politics stopped pretending to be a single mind. Westland taught Britain this lesson. When power stops arguing honestly inside the room, it starts briefing dishonestly outside of it. Time for more votes. Des Ashton, Nigel Lawson walked out of number 11 before he was pushed. Heseltine swung the mace around the House of Commons. I remember that vividly, Des. Reg D, I'm trying to remember him and I can't for the life of me. Who's that? Benedict Arnold in 1779. Yeah, well, they're going to be celebrating it in 2026 in America. Imagine our government in 20 years' time. Will it be any different? No, it'll be AI. I see you. Might have human beings. Corrupt. We'll just have AI. Corrupt. Karen says, back when Mandelson was leaking info, his then assistant was none other than the current DWP secretary, Pat McFadden. Is it? Yeah, Pat McFadden. Was it McFadden? What did McFadden know, and when did he stop knowing it? Good point, Kaz. So, another poll, another question. The question this time is, do you think there are scandals we'll never know the full truth about? 1 for yes, 2 for no, 3 for not sure. Do you think there are scandals we'll never know the full truth about? 1 for yes. Oh, blimey. Literally, everybody's saying yes. So, Comic Mania and Tom Harney, Super Ted Albert, Metcalf, Paul West Lionel, Andrew James, Angelic Inspirations, Dreamer, Amalia, I See You, The All Bovril, Legalista, Pete Sadler, Rusty's Roamings, and William Commons. Everybody is saying yes. So, in essence, it's kind of like a folklore, because some of the stories that they're trying to get into the press, like the Princes of Darkness and how many Russian hookers did Andrew shag, or how many Russian hookers did Bill Gates catch the clap from. It's all, the compromat is really simple. It's either sex or money. And as I said in one of the lives Sunday, I think, that for most relationships, the only two things that break them up is sex and money. So before we get to, thank you, Karina, thank you, Lauren, Les Griffiths, yeah, the forced resignation of Harold Wilson. He was shagging his secretary, wasn't he? The one with the kind of beehive hairdo. Lewis says, I'd love to spend a few hours going through MI5 files. Lewis, it might make your hair curl or put hairs on your chest. I mean, can you imagine what they know? MI5 is internal. MI6 is worldwide, isn't it? Des says, we're only privy to the froth. The real filth runs deep and silent. That's why Andrew is the blast furnace. And that's why Mandy is getting it, because Mandy is the sacrificial lamb to save the government. Because the stuff going on in the government, they don't want anybody else to know, including Starmer. I mean, the only time I've seen a man whose hands shook this badly is people that were coming off the booze. So why was Keir Starmer's hands shaking that badly at PMQs today? Go and watch it. It's there, right in front of your face. I saw it with my own eyes. You can see it with yours. And at one point, he was at the dispatch box and he had, I'm trying to work out, that hand and this hand, he had to put it on that hand. Or maybe the other way around. But either way, he had to use one hand to stop the other hand from shaking in public. And he had to answer the question. So A, what's he coming off? And B, why is his hand shaking? Is he shitting himself because he's going to lose his job? And has this got the fingerprints of Tony Blair all over it? Just asking a question for me mate who doesn't quite get what's going on. So before we get to follow the money, sex sells. Every era has stories everyone knows and no one can prove. That kind of tells you less about guilt and more about how power controls risk. I mean, some scandals, they just go nuclear. Others are so buried so deeply, they turn into folklore. Have you heard this? Have you heard this? So here's some sexy political scandals that are fact-based and defensible. John Profumo, like a fiddler's elbow. I mean, we already have that as the number one and the myth, but it's sex, Cold War, and light parliament as the template. But then in the 70s, can you not remember Jeremy Thorpe and his affair with the model Norman Scott? There was allegations of a plot to silence him. Plot to silence him? Murder him. Well, dead men can't speak. So this wasn't necessarily about sexuality. It was about what happens when reputation becomes more valuable than truth. Thorpe was acquitted in court, but was finished in public life. Can you remember Jonathan Aitken in the 1990s? I mean, it wasn't a sex scandal per se, but he denied an affair, sued for libel, lied under oath. Prison followed. So sex started the fire, pride poured the petrol on it, and then perjury lights the match. Do you want another one? David Blunkett, mucky old tart, had an affair. There was the nanny visa situation and use of his office allegations. I mean, I would say it's great as a human frailty moment. The tragedy here wasn't lust, it was carelessness with power. And then the Don, Bojo, the clown, Shagger Johnson. I mean, affairs. I mean, he's got so many kids now, he could put out a rugby league side. There was the flat refurbishments, blurred lines between personal life and public money. I shall say no more. And then, say no more. This was an era where scandal stopped being shocking because charisma became a shield. So for everything that Boris Johnson was and is, I'm going to ask you another vote. We were locked down, rattling our pots and pans and giving the NHS the clap on a Thursday night, while they were all having beers and pizza at number 10 and not being locked down. And MPs were going from London to Glasgow on the train whilst testing positive for Charlie 19. So I'm going to ask you a question. Johnson's certainly happy about the child benefit cap being being lifted. Oh, Rich, yeah. David Mellor in his Chelsea kit. Where was I working? I was working for Liberty 963 for Fayed, and I was getting the tube from Richmond into town. And I'm trying to remember the girl that was shagging David Mellor, and they said, no, he's a married man. No. And then she came out and said, oh, yeah, he was shagging me while he was wearing a Chelsea top. Mucky pervert. Comic Mania, well remembered. Antonia de Sanchez. So I saw her sitting on the tube, and I was like, should I go over and tell her I'm a Sunderland supporter? Better strip, obviously. Cecil Parkinson, wasn't he banging his secretary? Again, huge scandal. Portcullis House, rent boys via WhatsApp. I know, Bad Wolf Project. I say it nearly every live. So I'm going to ask you another question. 1 for yes, 2 for no, 3 for I don't know. Was Partygate about rule breaking, 1, or about hypocrisy? 2, what was Partygate actually about? Was it about the rule breaking, 1, or was it about hypocrisy? 2. Who gave Savile the keys to Broadmoor? Again, interesting. Cuban Pete's the only one, but Cuban Pete always says 1. Rich and Dodzer, Comic Mania, Matthew Whedon, Tom Harneys, Des, Gary Shabot, Nicky Wilson, Sierra Alpha Bravo, and Alison and Lewis and Paul West. God, everybody's saying 2. But then Angelic Inspiration says both 1 and 2. So the Bovril and Legalista and Garen Davis, 2. Andrew James makes a very, very good point. We were used as a social experiment. So thank you for that. But I'm going to ask you another question straight away before I get on to what I need to get on to. Do you think emergency powers were abused during the pandemic? 1 for yes, 2 for no, 3 for I don't know. Do you think emergency powers were abused during the pandemic? Interesting. Rich says, for them it was politics, for the public it was hypocrisy. So Dodzer and Comic Mania and Sierra Alpha Bravo. Enver, Pauline Makepeace, Garen, Mad Matt, Des, Les, I See You and Oval Raw, Karina Lewis, Retro and his bikes, 1. Rusty's Roamings and the U Bovril. Everybody's saying yes. The question was, do you think emergency powers were abused during the pandemic? And literally everybody. Hell yes, says Karina. So here's another scandal. I mentioned the Cash for Honours a little earlier. Not sexy on the surface, but it can be made sexy. Money, access, titles, proximity to power. I mean, there's no bed sheets, no Chelsea football tops, no lipstick, just a quieter kind of intimacy. So I'm going to ask you an obvious question, because I'm going to get into the UK parliamentary expenses scandal in a moment. Do you think money has more influence in politics now than it did in the 1990s? Does money have more influence in politics now than it did in the 1990s. 1 for yes, 2 for no. Comic Mania says, driving to Barnard Castle to check my eyesight. Should have gone to Specsavers. And then he invited all the press into the number 10 Downing Street garden at his little crickety desk. So the question currently is, do you think money has more influence in politics than it did in the 1990s? Everybody's saying yes, apart from Dodzer. Stephen Clayton, Nicky Watson. Oh, apologies. Nicky Watson saying no. Super Ted saying no. So, interesting. Sierra Alpha Alpha Bravo, no. Comic Mania, no. But Matt Whedon, Your Bovril, Elliot, Mike, Lionel. So I would say it's kind of 90%, 10%. Gary Shabot and Stewart and Catwoman Jones. Cuban Pete, 1. Allison. Everything has its price and always had, says Napoleon Blown Apart. Good point. Very good point. So let's look at parliamentary expenses scandal. This was when the system actually exposed itself to everybody that was watching. Now, it wasn't necessarily a scandal. This was the moment the public realised the rule book had a private edition. So, 2009, after the financial crisis, 2008, all the banks were going under. Literally, they weren't talking about things getting bad. They were talking recession. They were talking depression. Everybody was tightening their belts. And then the receipts hit the newspapers. Not rumours, not leaks. Documents. So what was it that people saw? Well, second homes, flipped mortgages, there was renovations, claims that felt legal but obscene. Now, most of it wasn't illegal, but that was the problem. Because legality without legitimacy is a dead end. I don't know about you, but I didn't feel robbed. I'm sure the public didn't feel robbed. As a collective, what we felt was mocked. The scandal wasn't the money. It was the assumption that no one would ever look. I mean, there was resignations, there was repayments, there were prosecutions, but the damage was already done. They'd been siphoning off the money for decades and decades and decades. So why this one changed everything was because the expenses blew a hole in the old defences. Everybody does it. It's within the rules. And you wouldn't understand how hard the job is. After 2009, those excuses stopped working. Why? Because the audience knew. The audience had the receipts. Expenses didn't just create anger, it created permanent suspicion. A bit like this Labour government. I said to you that Southport was the moment it all changed. Felt rehearsed. Every inquiry felt procedural. Trust didn't collapse. It withdrew. This expenses scandal taught Britain a brutal truth. When rules are written for insiders, sunlight doesn't disinfect, it indicts. As I've said many times on these lives, it's very well known now that I've told you that the scandals normally are divided in two ways. One, Labour, it's always about the money. I mean, Nick Brown, nobody knows what happened to Nick Brown. I'm not going to speculate at all. But normally, with the Labour Party, in general terms, it's always about the money. And the Conservatives, it's always about the shagging. behind the wife's back or the husband's back or rent boys. It's always about the sex. So there was an operation called Operation Midland, between 2014 and 2016. It investigated historic VIP child abuse. Claims made by a guy called Carl Beach, or Nick. It ended without charges and was later heavily criticised for investigative failures. The Met, the Metropolitan Police Force, apologised to some of those falsely accused. There was the Enrique review, commissioned after Midland, that criticised the Met's handling and said the accused were victims of false allegations, and it recommended changes including anonymity until sufficient evidence existed. And then there was the independent inquiry into child sexual abuse. It produced extensive material on Westminster-linked allegations and institutional response patterns. And this independent inquiry included the Elm Guest House as an example of non-recent abuse investigations and how institutions responded. I'm not going to go into the Elm Guest House this evening, but I am sure there are people in the body of the Kirk tonight that know all about the Elm Guest House and its most famous patron. So when a society can't prove things, it turns into folklore, like the Elm Guest House. Some stories live in the country like a ghost in the hallway. Andrew's not Phillips. He's Portuguese. People whisper them. People know them. People repeat them like weather. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Sometimes those stories are true and never proved. Sometimes they're false and are never killed. And in both cases, the real scandal is exactly the same. The system can't or won't resolve reality into evidence. So we've seen what happens when police chase sensational claims without solid foundations. Operation Midland ended with no charges. And the Enrique review later criticised the investigative approach. That outcome hurts everyone. It harms the falsely accused and it chills genuine victims who fear they won't be believed. Savile. When Savile was alive, nobody dared. The victims wouldn't come forward because they felt and they feared they wouldn't be believed. So tonight, I'm not asking you to believe rumours. I'm asking you to notice the machinery. If you look at what's going on with, Peter Mandelson, he's not a Lord anymore, he's resigned. He's been sacked as a Privy Councillor. He was part of New Labour, one of the architects of New Labour, with Blair and Brown. He was the machinery. The machinery is when power clusters, when deference, tug your forelock, tug anything you want. That's what they want. When deference protects them. When institutions fear reputational damage more than moral failure. And when the public is left with smoke instead of answers. Elm Guest House and others, and Savile for that matter. Perfect example. When he was breathing, nobody dared. When he took his last, that's when it all came out. I would suggest a healthy society doesn't run on whispers. It runs on truth that can be tested. Rumour is what fills the room when evidence is kept out. And I want to say something carefully now. And I'm choosing my words with intention. Years ago, whilst working in broadcasting, I witnessed something that permanently altered how I understand power. Not a rumour or something I read later. My lived experience. Now, I'm not here to make claims I can't prove in public. And I'm not asking you to take anything on faith. I'm telling you what changed my internal compass. I saw, up close, how proximity to authority changes behaviour. How normal rules bend. How silence is assumed. You've seen nothing, Adrian. Go home. But, you've seen nothing. Go home, Adrian. How no one asks questions. But does he not want a can of Coke or something? I should have started asking questions. And I didn't ask questions not because I was afraid, but because the system has trained everyone not to. And here's the part that stayed with me personally. The most unsettling thing wasn't what I saw. It was how ordinary it felt to everyone else in the room. That's when I understood this. Power doesn't always hide. Sometimes it just walks straight through the front door and trusts that no one will challenge it. I was a young guy at the beginning of my radio career. I wasn't going to challenge that. I knew what was going on. There was a household name shagging a 12-year-old boy. And there are things I've witnessed in my working life that I will never describe in detail. Not that particular instance, others. Not because I'm afraid, but because I understand responsibility. I don't need to convince you. I don't need to name names. What I learned, and what matters, is this. When power believes it is untouchable, Mandy Mandelson, it behaves differently. It assumes silence, assumes compliance, assumes the room, as happened when I was a young guy starting my radio career. Everybody looked away. And that assumption, not any individual act, is the real danger. That moment didn't give me answers. It gave me pattern recognition. And once you've seen that pattern, you stop chasing scandal. You stop needing outrage. You start watching the behaviour. Because I'm not asking you to believe an allegation. I'm inviting you to recognise pattern. And once you can see the pattern, you don't need all the answers to know where you're standing. This person and that person, they've done this and that and the other. Doesn't matter who and what. Notice the pattern that you're seeing. Aligned minds recognise the same line. So let me draw this to a conclusion this evening. I want to say this to you. The body of the Kirk is a gathering on a Sunday and a Monday and a Wednesday. Tonight, we didn't gather here to solve every mystery. And we didn't come to land every verdict. You and I came here to do something much rarer. We came here to this gathering in the body of the Kirk to slow the world down just enough to see how it moves. Because scandals aren't just about bad behaviour. They're not about accepting 10 grand in your bank account or 75 grand in your other bank account or not remembering any money coming your way. The evidence is in the emails. So what I would suggest to you, that scandals are about stress. They're about pressure. They're about what happens when power believes it's being watched. Or worse, as in Mandy's case, when it believes it isn't. We've got a situation here where the Labour government is teetering on collapse. Somebody earlier, I think it was Bad Wolf Project, said that there's 120 letters of no confidence possibly going in. You need 100. Once 100 or more go in, could be a leadership challenge. And I said to you earlier, recognise the pattern. Don't be taken in by the bullshit. Why was Ginger Growler in the chamber today when most people weren't? I didn't see her during PMQs. And then afterwards, there was another debate. And she was sat there, looking slimmer. But she still talked to the speaker. And I thought to myself, whoa. Now, whether it is true or not, either she does or people around her do believe that the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, did her political legs. Is revenge a dish best served cold? Is she about to make her play? Because the Labour government is in disarray. Mandy Mandelson will never go back to Westminster because the people that are in Westminster are afraid that his scandal is going to bring them down, the Labour government down, the whole system down. It could bring the institutions down. It's not, this blast furnace is not happening in America, it's happening here. Sir Keir Starmer said he knew everything about Mandy's relationship with Epstein before he appointed him as the British ambassador to America. One of the most high-profile and sought-after jobs. He got it. Trump knew. And I've said to you before, you can tell by how Trump responds. He doesn't like Keir Starmer at all. But when Mandy, I can't see that, I think it's Stuart. I do appreciate it, Stuart. Thank you. Cheers, Adrian. Really enjoyed this. Thank you, as always, for your support. So when Trump is when he's having a go at Sniffy, you know Trump hates drugs. It did for his brother that he worshipped. Drink and drugs. So Trump doesn't drink, doesn't do drugs. Sleeps 3 or 4 hours a night, if he's lucky. Because he chooses to. Didn't like Sniffy, didn't want him around until he was done as he was told. And now we have a situation, grab your popcorn, buckle up, buttercup. Dreamers saying on X, they are saying Starmer may resign in the next few hours. They're expecting it. If Westminster is full of this rumour, there may be a kernel of truth to it. He's done. But remember when I said to you last Wednesday, he looks like a man defeated. He knew what was coming because the security services were telling him what was coming. That was their job. But Starmer is toxic. The Labour Party know that the local elections in May, they're going to get crucified. They know that if Starmer stays any further, then they're going to lose the next general election. If they have Ginger Growler, which is their preferred candidate, and or Andy Burnham, or the Manchester Mafia, Labour know that Reform are going to get in the Manchester by-election. Oof. Bad Wolf Project saying The Guardian is reporting Labour MP say Starmer's days as PM are numbered amid fury over Mandelson. And ICU says now he's blaming the security for Mandy. Well, they always just default to national security. No, we can't discuss this. It'll affect national security. That's their default. But we are so much more sophisticated. Since 2020, when we were locked down for a couple of years, we can... How can you tell when a politician's lying? Their lips move. We know all this now. They can't pull the wool over our eyes. And that's why I would suggest to you his hands were shaking today. Because the shit flying, he hasn't got the machinery. McSweeney, he's possibly the next one to go. Comic Mania saying it'll be Millie Brain as PM. I bet you he's had a go before and he completely ruined it. This time round, and you could be right, Comic Mania, you could be right. But I think what the Labour Party want is they want a female Prime Minister. Doesn't matter how long for. They need a safe pair of hands. If Burnham is going to come in and steady the ship and get them ready for a general election, which could be as close as 2027, a year away, they need somebody in place that the electorate like. And Yvette Cooper, not Shabana Mahmood. She's going to screw up the police. Ray Norton, you're wrong, and Miliband will be the next PM, says Theo Bovril. He may have the unions on side, or used to, but this is a different Labour beast. They're panicking, they're knee-jerking, they're not responding, they're reacting. They don't know what to do. They want to maintain power. All the backbenchers are now absolutely filling their pants. As Amalia says, I don't like any of them. That's the problem for Labour. They only had a one-trick pony, one horse to back. And look what he's done. And he loves the power. He loves the freebie. He loves everything. But even on the world stage, they know he's a dead duck. He's a lame horse. He's gone. He's finished. He's over. But the country has wanted him gone because of his toxicity since Southport. So let me ask you one more question. Bad Wolf Project. Carol Vordenhawks for PM. Should take it. She could be camel toe PM. I'm going to ask you another question. 1 for yes, 2 for no, 3 for unsure. Do you think powerful people are still protected by the system? 1 for yes, 2 for no, 3 for not sure. Do you think powerful people are still protected by the system? I see you. Growler is getting a diamond-studded vape pen. So Dodzer and Orokida. You're very kind, Andrew James. Adrian Allen for PM. They wouldn't have me. A bit like Trump. Stuart, Elliot, Ray Norton and Cuban Pete. The Bad Wolf Project and Alison and Super Ted and Retro on his bikes. Lovely to have you in the body of the Kirk tonight, Retro. I know you're struggling a bit, but still lovely to have you here. Ray Hart and Mad Matt and Lauren Taylor over Raw Comic Mania. Amalia, Matthew Whedon. Blair still is. Very good. I might touch on the Royals in a second. Napoleon Blown Apart, very good point. 1 for those that comply, 2 for those that don't. So the majority is saying, do you think powerful people are still protected by the system? Yes. So on tonight's live, you've seen how patterns repeat. From all the scandals that I've mentioned so far, whether it's the sex or the money, or whether it's the power really What's the old phrase? Power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. And if you look at social media, what I've tried to do tonight is I want you to recognize patterns so that you can, and there's a lot of intelligent people that come to these lives, so you can recognize what's going on and, more importantly, see the outcomes before the outcome. So you've seen patterns repeat tonight. You've seen how secrecy forms and how language, sedition, treason, gets weaponized, and how, importantly, institutions protect themselves, and how the working man and woman, me and you, are left to make sense of the fallout. Oh yeah, the Bovril. Starmer and his voice coach. Wonder what'll come of that. Great point, the Bovril. Napoleon Bonaparte says you can go back to Roman times, same patterns today. And David Graham, you wouldn't trust a politician to tell us the time in a room full of clocks. That's a great line. And Enver, to Orokida, the threat could keep him in number 10, though. That is an excellent point. Is it better the devil you know? As I've said to you many times before, they put someone into the positions of power that they can control. Whether it's the World Economic Forum or the Chinese Communist Party or the UN or the World Health Organization, they need to control the decision makers. So tonight, if you leave the body of the Kirker with anger, that is understandable. If you leave with questions, that's healthy. But if you leave with clarity, that is strength. You don't need to know everything. You just need to know where you're standing. And the moment you can recognize a pattern, you stop being pulled around by every new revelation. You stop being rushed and played. You become harder to manipulate. Now, you know me to be a cynical old tart, but that's not cynicism. That is literacy. And I'll guarantee you, it was for the last 2 or 3 weeks, it's been Beckham watch every single day. Beckham, 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 Beckham. And it was only when Trump dropped this massive Epstein dump that we got Bill Gates denying that he's had the clap. It's in the emails. So here's the thing. If one thing is wrong, it's all wrong. But if that thing's right, it's all right. So keep asking better questions. And remember, clarity in the chaos isn't about certainty. It's about orientation. And that's what I want to bring for you in these lives. Over the next couple of days, this story is going to rumble and rumble and rumble. And normally, how PR works is they will offer the newspapers something to stop the story dead in its tracks. Where they need to stop the story now is the damage it's doing to the Labour Party. Not Starmer. They're now realising Starmer can do anything that he wants. He can be on the executive and stop them from choosing somebody to stand against him as leader. He can stop the letters going in, possibly, but if there's 120 MPs sending letters of votes of no confidence into the executive are going to have to look at him, Starmer, at the same table and go, mate, time to go. He doesn't want to go. But how on earth has he gotten himself into this, I'll euphemistically call it a pickle. How has he got himself into this pickle when he was the head of the CPS? He's a barrister, lawyer, legal, pretty sharp, so some people say. But this is a schoolboy error. And some people are saying, well, Mandy promoted Starmer to get the job, so that once Starmer was in power, he would get some nice work. And I think he's still taking the British ambassador wage out of the system. Don't think he's getting many Ferrero Rocher, to be fair. But this story continues, and it's not going to stop. And again, you have all of these people online. And as I said in the live on Sunday, it's got to be more salacious. It's got to be more than, and more than, and more than. It doesn't have to be accurate or factual. It just has to be more than. It just has to be frazzle drip. It just has to be this and that and the other. And you're looking at this amorphous mass thinking, wow, or Toblerone, Stuart, yeah. Very good. It's people now, it's about clicks and likes and making money from what they do. These lives are not monetized. And why? Because I want to get the truth to you without being constrained by other people or other organizations or other platforms saying you can't do that. It's the pulpit of truth. And that's why I named it as such. So thank you for your likes, your subscriptions, but most of all, your indulgence. I do hope that this has brought some value for you this evening. I do hope that when we lift the veil, you can see with clarity, and it is clarity in the chaos. The chaos will continue. The Labour Party are going to limp on. How long for? Anybody's guess. Starmer, he's finished. They're not going to allow him, because what's happened with Mandy Mandelson is going to rub off on him. He's toxic for the Labour cause now. It's now, as they did a month ago, they had a procession. I understand that there was a rumour that I heard earlier that David Lammy, as Deputy Prime Minister, could step into the breach. I mean, dear Lord, I know I take the mickey out of the boy, but can you imagine? I mean, he would be the first black Labour Prime Minister, so they could have him for a few weeks as Prime Minister, moving up. And then they would have a female, first woman Prime Minister. They would just cram it all in before they get eviscerated at the local elections in May, before they get eviscerated and wiped out at any general election. Because the people that are going to vote are watching all of this political theatre and laughing their caps off. So be safe, be well. Not sure when the next live's going to be, because I'm going to take a little time out for varying reasons. Thank you, Lewis. I'd rather have a block of Cheshire cheese running the country. Would make a better job of it, Bad Wolf Project. Look after yourself and be well. Just in case you need a grab bag, make sure you've got a slice of Battenberg and a little altar wine in there. This has been Live 289. It's not a show. It's a mission. And the mission, truth and clarity in the chaos. I'll let you know when the next live is, and I shall see you soon.